annual closedowns come around every year. And despite this being customary for many businesses out there, it always leaves employers with more questions than answers. Today's episode goes into the top closedown tips that every employer needs to know so that they're prepared and ready to go when those closedowns swing around. Hi everyone, welcome back to Lawlands. My name is Sanam and thank you so much for tuning in today. Welcome back to another episode of Employment Law Done Right. Today we are going to be talking about closedowns like you heard in the intro, and you're not going to believe this. It was exactly a year ago today that I was discussing closedowns and did the closedown episode. And we're back at it again because when I was doing the webinar that I ran for Employment Hero, which is my day job, everyone, separate to this, when I was running that webinar, I realized a lot of people still were questioning whether they were doing the right thing during the closedowns or not, and whether they've done their processes correctly. So I thought, why not do a shorter episode where we just focus on some top tips where you can really understand what you need to do for the closedown period and what you need to do beforehand to prepare. Now, if you're listening to me going, I need a full-on breakdown, I need to know what's actually going on, then I have the episode for you. Like I said, a year ago, I've done this episode. It's a full breakdown, and I've got that all linked for you in the description. Check it out. It breaks everything that you need to know down, even down to the minor details of what happens if sick leave or bereavement leave comes up. But before we get into looking at the top tips, I just wanted to say, make sure you follow Lawlands so that you get all of these practical insights straight to your phones, and make sure that you just never miss an Employment Law Done Right episode. All right, let's get into what an annual closedown is or what a shutdown is. And it's usually a period of time that an employer might shut their doors and require employees to take some time off. And that might be because it's a seasonal break, or it might be because there's a downturn in business. So it's all up to the employers and the business on how they want to do it. But yes, you get one customary closedown a year. That closedown, usually it can be across the entire business, and a lot of people opt in and do it that way. But then again, you can have it for part of your business as well. For example, let's say that there is a period of the year where the factory requires closing because there might be maintenance that needs to be done on certain machinery, whereas the office staff still need to be there to take calls, to field customers. When that happens, then the office may stay open, but then the factory may close for maintenance. It absolutely can be that for different parts of the workplace that there are different closedowns that happen, so they don't need to all happen at the same time. So let's talk about tip one, because that's a perfect segue. Tip one is making sure that this is actually a customary closedown, because the Holidays Act is very clear in what it says around closedowns and customary closedowns. You should only be undertaking one closedown where you're actually directing your employees to take their annual leave. If it's more than one, then that's when you've got to figure out other arrangements and what you need to do. And an employer can absolutely have closedowns that are not necessarily the same time, but you are able to shift and move those customary closedowns. You just need to be very clear and communicative with your employees about that so that they're well and truly aware of what's happening in advance. And another thing that comes up often, which is tip two, is have you actually provided your employees with notice? I know it seems simple, but there are still a lot of people, and I know the frantic scramble that you do right before the closedown to try to get this all done. But this is a key requirement under the legislation. And under the Holidays Act, it is very clear that you need to give your employees 14 days notice of the closedown period. Now, in terms of what that notice needs to look like, I would recommend always to put something in writing, whether that's an email, a letter that's attached to the email that's been distributed to your employees. That will be your best bet against any claims saying that they were not aware, that they got directed to take their annual leave when you weren't within the time frame. Combat all of that by giving them the notice and having that in writing. If you're shutting down for December, you've got a month, so you still have that time to do that. Now, tip number 3 is the more controversial one, and it's the one that I thought, let's have a chat about, because this is the one that I got the most questions on since I decided to sneak it into that webinar that I did. And it's around what happens to leave. Because it's very easy to say the employee takes annual leave. When they've got annual leave entitlements there, then yes, absolutely. But what you've got to do is ask yourself, has the employee been working for you for at least 12 months? If it's a yes, then they've got their annual leave entitled and they're ready to go, and you can use that and it's all easy going from there. But what happens when you've got employees that haven't been there for 12 months? Now it gets a little bit tricky. So for employees that have not worked their entire 12 months, a lot of employers, what they will do is they will allow employees to take a little bit of leave at a time as they accrue their leave. So based on the accrual rate, little by little by little, the employee will be allowed to take some of their leave until the entitlement period finishes. That is one way to do it. But what a lot of people don't realize is what you're actually doing is giving the employee leave in advance, because they're not entitled to the leave until they hit that 12-month mark. So they are essentially borrowing that 4 week from you bit by bit. And that's why when they hit the 12-month mark, they don't have the entire 4 weeks there because they've now used a bit of it. So it is a benefit to employees because they're able to use their leave as they go. But where it's not a benefit for employers is that when you have shutdown periods, what happens when you've allowed them to use all this leave and now you've got a shutdown and the employee doesn't have any leave owing to them? So what the actual rule of thumb is and what the legislation actually requires is not what employers do. So what the legislation very clearly says, which a lot of people do not do, and I'm going to leave this completely up to you on whether you want to do it or not, but I just want you to know that under the law, this is a legal requirement, is that if you have an employee that's worked less than 12 months of service, and you're looking at a close down, then you need to pay them at the time of the close down 8% of their gross earnings. And then their anniversary date for their annual leave actually shifts to the first day, the start date of the close down. So we'll go through this in a little bit more detail. But basically what that means is that when the close down happens, so let's say, for example, you decide that the close down is going to start on the 20th of November, then that means that you need to pay everything out to the employee prior to the 20th of November. So make sure that hits their bank account. They get 8% of everything that they've earned thus far. And then from there, the employee's new annual leave anniversary date will be the 20th of November, which is the start date of the actual close down. Now, the reason why I say it's up to you if you want to do this, but it is a legal requirement, is because it's something that I spoke about in the other episode. So please check it out if you want a lot more detail. But Metropolitan Glass was a really, really big case around this. And it's where the court took a completely different view than what most employers out there do. And they were very clear in their determination. The court said that while paying leave in advance was actually a legitimate additional option, it could not be treated as an alternative to paying the 8% of gross earnings. So an employer has to pay that 8% of gross earnings. They have to do that. And that means that employers are not able to pick and choose what they want. So they can't say, actually, we're going to give you leave in advance because we don't want to pay you out that 8%. That's why it's really critical, is because we've got actually case law around this. What you could potentially do, and look, this isn't a hard or fast rule, there's nothing set in law around this, is that you could speak to your employees where you say to them, look, the law requires me to pay you out a lump sum, 8% of everything that you've earned. But if you would like to take leave in advance, then you can apply for leave in advance. Just let me know and explain to them what that looks like. When it comes to that anniversary date as well, I just wanted to touch on that one more time, that for annual holiday entitlements, that anniversary date will be moved to the close down start date or any time around there. That's a bit appropriate, right? And when you're offering leave in advance or adjusting the anniversary date, just think about it a little bit in terms of what will happen in the future. So if an employee takes leave in advance this year, how will that actually impact them next year? Very easy for you to just keep giving them a little bits of their accrued leave as they want and as they're taking it. But then what happens later on down the track? The last tip that I wanted to discuss was about the public holidays. A lot of people get confused around this, and rightfully so. You don't know if the person's actually owed the public holiday or if it's taken as an annual leave day. And the best way to look at it is to step aside from being a scenario where it's a close down and just go, would the employee have otherwise worked on that particular day? So would the employee have normally come in and done their shift or come in and done their work, and would it have been an otherwise working day for them? For example, this year, Christmas just so happens to be on a Wednesday. That's a day that I would have normally worked. And because of that, it would be considered an otherwise working day for me. On that particular day, I would not get any annual leave deducted. I would just get paid my normal pay that I would get for working on that day. And that's what you'll need to figure out. Is that a day that the employee would have normally worked? And if so, what would that shift or that day have looked like for them? Well, that is it. It was a quick, short one. I just wanted to say, if you haven't been following the podcast, make sure that you give it a follow. Come over onto LinkedIn, connect with me, say hello. I love meeting you all. And I hope that you all are having a lovely wrap up to November and December, and all the festivities are not looking too far away. That is it from me, everyone. Thank you so much. If you have any more questions, make sure you check out that Closedowns episode, which I've linked in the description already. There you go. See, it's already there. Now, I hope you have a lovely day, night, evening, morning, whatever it may be. And guess what? I'll catch you in the next one, everyone.